announce that later. Okay, we're going to start learning the next few days the dinim of Chanukah, because Chanukah again is Sunday night. Okay, the Gemara asks the question, my Chanukah, what's Chanukah all about? Meaning, for what miracle did they inaugurate and establish the Yom Tov of Chanukah? So the Gemara says, in the days of the time of the second Bais Hamikdash, the Greeks were making various decrees against the Jews. They didn't let them keep Shabbos, they didn't let them do Torah mitzvahs, they defiled the women. So then the Chashmonaim came, and they were victorious over them, and they came into the Bais Hamikdash, as everybody knows. They only found enough oil to last one day, which was the seal of the Kohen Gadol, and a miracle happened and lasted 8 days. Which was very interesting. There's an argument in halacha between the Rambam and the Meiri. B'chal it says in halacha that, in Svarim Chanukah is 2 words, Chanukah. They rested on the 25th. So the Rambam learns that the battle was over on the 25th of Kislev. That day they won the battle, they came into the Bais Hamikdash. The Meiri holds, no, the battle was on the 24th of Kislev, they won the war. Why do we say Chanukah? Because that's when they really rested. They rested from the battle, but the war was actually won on the 24th of Kislev, versus the Rambam that holds it was actually the 25th day of Kislev. So it says like this. So therefore the Chachamim established, the Chachamim of that generation, 2 things. Number 1, Chanukah is with Hallel and Heidah, meaning Al Nisim, and Hallel, complete Hallel for the 8 days of Chanukah. In addition to that, the Chachamim established the mitzvah of lighting Chanukah candles. But before we get into that, for instance, Chanukah is established as a festive time, which means there's no fasting in Chanukah, there's no eulogies in Chanukah, nothing to do with anything of sadness is allowed according to halacha on the days of Chanukah. Only simcha. It's what?
If somebody's saying Shiva, what happens then?
Chanukah, well, that's the case. Chanukah does not push off Shiva. There's full Shiva during Chanukah as regular Shiva. Obviously, they light the candles, they do all that stuff, but that's it. There is a full Shiva during Chanukah.
So there's no fasting, but a veil is...
Fasting is forbidden. Eulogies would be forbidden. Like, for instance, somebody, God forbid, passed away at the funerals on Chanukah, you're not allowed to make any eulogies. Even a chassan who's getting married during Chanukah, a lot of people make chassanas during the Chanukah, they don't fast the day of the wedding. They either fast early or later, whatever. The day of the wedding, Chanukah, you're not allowed to fast. Now, you're allowed to work during Chanukah. The women have a custom, because the main miracle happened through Yehudis, who is Matasyahu's daughter, and she killed the Greek general, and so on and so forth. So the women have a custom that while the candles are burning, they don't do work. Work means what you wouldn't do on Chol Hamoed. They wouldn't do laundry, they wouldn't sew, things that you wouldn't do Chol Hamoed. Latkes, that's a mitzvah. To make a lot. By the way, what's the reason why we eat latkes on Pesach, by the way, is, Chanukah. People eat latkes on Pesach too, but the reason why we eat latkes on Chanukah is because oil, it's made in oil. The Yom Tov is oil. In fact, later on in history, it became savgoniyot, the donuts. She also fried in oil. But that's the halachic source, so to speak, of the custom of why you eat those things.
It's not because the Greeks honored the body to be in perfect shape. So
that's why.
I'm joking, that's why we fight it with donuts, so we're not like the Greeks.
No, just the opposite. It's a good point. It's a very valid point. The point is that Purim, there's a mitzvah to eat. One of the mitzvahs of Purim is to have a su'udah. Chanukah, there is no mitzvah to have a su'udah. If you have a su'udah and you speak a Dvar Torah, it's called Su'udas mitzvah. But there's no obligation that somebody has to wash for bread on Chanukah. Purim, there's an obligation that you have to wash. Another interesting thing in the Pelish Yisvan, the Pelish Rebbe say a very interesting thing. Chanukah, you play with a dreidel. The handle of the dreidel is on top of the dreidel. Purim, use a grogger. The handle of the grogger is at the bottom of the grogger. Why is that? Everything in Judaism, every custom has basis. So it says, and this is a fundamental difference halachically between Chanukah and Purim. Purim, Haman made a decree against the body of the Jew. He didn't care who you were. Man, women, child, learned, not learned, he didn't care. You're a Jew, he's going to kill you. Chanukah was only a gzeira on the soul of the Jew. Because the Misyavdim, the Jews that became, those called in English Hellenists, that they became followers of the Greeks, they were held in high esteem. They didn't kill Jews, they only killed Jews that were neshama Jews, so to speak. So because Purim was a decree on the body of the Jew, so you celebrate it by physically eating. That's the union of the Sudas Purim. Chanukah, which was a spiritual decree, so the spiritual decree, you light the menorah, oil, fire, that's all spiritual. So the Bnei Yisachar, it was a great Pelish Rebbe says, the dreidel, because Chanukah is exerted against the Jew, the neshama, so the handle's on top. Purim, it's on the goof, so it's at the bottom, higher and lower. But the reason why the custom is yet to play dreidel, well, what's the origin of the custom that you play dreidel? So it says in Svarim that when there's a decree, you're not allowed to learn Torah. So when the Jews would have guards at the door, so to speak, and when the Greeks would come, they would hide the books and they would take out these things to play games. So it was like a dreidel. So because they were saved, so to speak, from being killed with the dreidel, so therefore the custom is you play with the dreidel. What's very interesting, and the Rebbe pointed this out many times, if you ever see an Israeli dreidel in Eretz Yisrael, it says Nun Gimel Hey Pei Nes Gadol Haya Po. Outside of Eretz Yisrael, our dreidels also Nes Gadol Haya Sham Nun Gimel Hey Shin, because in Eretz Yisrael the miracle was Po, and by us it's Sham. But the Rebbe points out an interesting thing: the letters Nun Gimel Hey Shin, which is the same letters as the word Goshna, which where the Jews were settled in Egypt, Goshen, Goshna. Gimel Shin Nun Hey is the numerical value of Mashiach. So the Rebbe said what's interesting, in the Israeli dreidels, you don't have the numerical value of Mashiach. It's Nun Gimel Hey Pei, doesn't equal Mashiach. But Nun Gimel Hey Shin Dafke in Golus, do you have, because the Choshech, the darkness is greater, so the revelation of Mashiach, just like, what's very interesting, we mentioned Pesach before, in Israel, they don't have the 8th day of Pesach. They have the 7th day of Pesach, right? The whole inyan, the 8th day of Pesach being the inyan of Mashiach, the Haftarah is about Mashiach, you have Mashiach Suda, all these things about Mashiach only exists outside of Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, they don't have a Haftarah dealing with Mashiach. And the 7th day, it's the Shvisha Pesach. So it's the Rebbe points out, because Dafka from the Choshech, the greater the darkness, so that's the union where Mashiach comes from, so to speak. So it's interesting, Chanukah, it's also 8 days, whatever, we'll get into that later. Okay, so the bottom line is that men are allowed to work during Chanukah, women have a custom as long as the candles are burning, meaning the obligatory time that the candles were burning, we'll discuss that. Then the custom is not to drink and not to do work. But why did the miracle come through Yehudis? So it says she was a very beautiful woman, and the Greek general wanted, they used to grab the Jewish girls and defile them. So she invited him to her house, and she gave him cheese, and cheese makes you thirsty. And then he was thirsty, she gave him wine to drink. And then he became intoxicated, and then he fell asleep, and she chopped off his head and brought it to the Greek army, and when they saw that their leader was killed, they all ran away, and that's one of the sources of the miracle of Chanukah. So because the miracle came, because of a woman, so therefore there's a minhag the women have that they don't do work while the candles are burning.
Does that have anything to do with Chana's Messiah's Nefesh? Any connection to that?
No. Chana and the 7 kids is not necessarily connected directly with Chanukah.
Oh, why is it so connected?
Messiah's Nefesh, some people say it happened Chanukah time, whatever, but
It wasn't during the period of no shackles.
I don't know. I don't know historically if it was at the same time. It's connected to Chanukah, obviously. Okay, so just to begin, the halacha, there's a mitzvah on Chanukah, every night of Chanukah, to light candles. And here's another unique thing of Chanukah. The Gemara says, what's the mitzvah of Chanukah candles? How do you fulfill the mitzvah of Chanukah candles? So you light 1 candle per household per night. That means you have 10 people in your house, the first night you light 1 candle. Second night, 1 candle. Third night, 1 candle. 8th night, 1 candle. Then the Gemara says, Mahadrin, if you want to be more careful, you light the first night. If you have 10 people in the house, you light 10 candles the first night, 10 candles the second night, 10 candles the third night, 10 candles the 8th night. So you don't add to the candles.
As long as it's more than 7.
No, it doesn't matter. 2 people, you light 2 each night, whatever it is. That's Mahadrin, if you want to do the mitzvah better. Then you have what's called Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, the best of the best. So then, the Gemara said, Beishami holds, you go 8, 7, 6, 5, but Beisil goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What's very interesting, we'll finish with this, that there's an argument between Taisus and the Rambam. Taisus holds that the Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, means the going up, adding each candle the first night, is not on all 10. Meaning, the mitzvah is 1 candle per night per household. Mahadrin is 1 candle per person per night. Okay? Mahadrin, Mina Mahadrin, according to Taisus, is 1 person only lights the first night 1, the second night 2, the third night 3, and so on. The Rambam holds, no, it's going on the Mahadrin, meaning there's 10 people, you light 10 candles, so all 10 light 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And it's interesting because in Shulchan Aruch, the Bais Yosef, who was Sephardi, paskins like Taisus, and the Ramah, who was that Ashkenazi, paskin like the Rambam. This is one of the few places the Chidah says that we cross, that the Ashkenazim follow the Rambam's opinion and the Sephardim follow the Taisus' opinion. It's a very unique situation.